In this video, we will show you how to replace your rear emergency brake shoes. Let's get started. Okay friends, let's get started on our job. The first thing you need to do is safely raise and support the rear of the vehicle so the wheels are up and off the ground. Once you've done that, continue on to removing all 6 of your 21mm lug nuts and then the wheel. The next thing we're going to do is remove the caliper from the area. To do that, you'll find that you have 2 12mm headed bolts that hold it in place. Remove the pair. Inspect your hardware as you remove it. Replace it as necessary. Let's continue on with a small prying device. We want to get in between the caliper and this area of the rear differential bracket. We'll gently pry up on this lower aspect. As we pull it away, we'll continue on by drawing it down. Once you have it off of there, it's important to make sure you inspect your brake pad material. Make sure it's not worn at an angle or damaged in any way. Assuming it looks good, go ahead and set that aside. With that out of the way, continue on by removing the rotor. Typically, you can just grab onto this, give it a little wiggle, and pull it right off. If it's stuck in place, carefully use a hammer along this flat area. Be extremely careful not to damage any of your lug studs or the braking material. Give that a quick inspection and set it aside. With the rotor out of the way, we can start removing our emergency brake shoes. To remove the emergency brake shoes, let's start over at this spring. To easily remove the spring, we'll use some long nose pliers. Grab onto one of the ears and pull it towards the hole in the shoe and remove it. You can see it has a little hook here. We'll take it off of the other side. Give that a quick inspection, make sure it's still reusable. Assuming it looks good, set it aside. Now we can start removing our adjuster. Before you take it out, pay attention to its orientation. You want to make sure that you have the adjuster cog facing up when you're working on the driver's side. To easily remove this, you can grab onto it, get underneath the shoe, and separate it. Once you have it out of there, it's a good idea to take it apart and clean the threaded area, inspect it, and then re-lubricate it. After that, go ahead and put it back together and set it aside. Now we can start removing our upper emergency brake shoe. For this, you're going to find that you have 1 anchor pin up along the top here. To remove this, you can use a screwdriver, come right along the top of this clip and gently press it in. When you do that, it releases the pin. Grab the pin with some long nose pliers, twist it so it's lined up with the hole in the clip. Once you have that done, you can continue on by removing the clip from the area. Now let's hold on to that upper shoe, carefully lifting it up a little bit. That's going to be putting a tug on our last mounting spring. To remove this spring, carefully grab it with some cutting pliers. You don't want to cut it, but these do tend to grip onto the spring just enough so you can lift it up and out of the shoe. There's one of our shoes. We'll set that aside. Grab that spring, give it a close inspection. Now that we have that out of the way, we can carefully remove our actuator from the area. Now for this, as you start pulling it away, inside you're going to find that you have a hook that goes over the emergency brake cable. Generally, by wiggling it around a little bit, it should want to separate. There's the hook right there. That slides right into the cable, which is located behind here. To lubricate this, it's a good idea to use some copper never-sees around where the hinge point is here. You want to make sure that it can pivot freely. Make sure you work it in there. Perfect. Now we can continue on by removing our final shoe. To remove the clip, you know what to do. Use your screwdriver, press in on the clip, and twist that pin until it releases. Now, if you are replacing the hardware as well, go ahead and remove that final pin. If you're not, go ahead and leave it in there. Once you've done that, continue on by cleaning up all of the mating surface for where your shoes are going to ride. To clean this, I'll use my wire brush. While I'm doing this, I want to be extremely careful for my ABS sensor. You also want to make sure you get all along the backing plate. Once you've finished up cleaning that backing plate, we're going to continue on with some high temperature caliper lubricant. We want to make sure that you coat the raised areas on your backing plate. You're going to have several of them, and that's the areas that the shoe is going to be pressed up against. You want to make sure that the shoes can flow around freely. Lubricate all those areas. Once you have all 6 of those areas lubricated, continue on up along this area where the shoe sits into. Now it's time to install our emergency brake shoes. We'll start with the lower shoe. Make sure you have the side with the square cutout facing towards the front of the vehicle. You'll also notice it has the hole for the mounting spring that goes around the adjustment point. Let's take this and slide this hole over our lower pin. Sometimes it's important to make sure you hold that lower pin from the backing plate. Once you have that in position, continue on with your locking clip. Looking at the pin, you can tell that it has a flat head. You also want to look at the clip itself, and you'll notice that you have a flat cutout. Go ahead and line that up, press it in, and then twist the pin until it's in the locked position. Double check to make sure it's completely secure. Now we can continue on with that actuator. Make sure you slide that hook into your emergency brake cable and then put it into position looking like this. Let's continue on to the upper pin. Slide it through the back of the backing plate, in through the front side here. Continue on with your upper shoe. We're going to slide the pin right through this oblonged hole. Once you have it through there, continue on with your locking clip. Line it up, twist the pin to lock it in position. Now we can slide this down into position over its mounting bracket here, and then also make sure you have the actuator in position as well. Let's continue on to our spring. Bring it up and through here, grab it along the top, slide it into position in the lower part of the shoe. Now we'll just stretch the top part here up into its mounting position in the top shoe. Double check to make sure the spring is completely seated on both of your emergency brake shoes. Let's move along to the forward part of the shoes and install our adjuster. Looking at the adjuster, you can tell that it has a slot along the top and the bottom. That's where the shoe needs to sit. Go ahead and line it up, slide it into each of the shoes. You can spread the shoes as necessary to make it line up. Once you feel as though you have it seated into the grooves, continue on with your spring. On each side of the spring, you'll have a hook. The hook needs to sit into the holes in the shoe. Put it in along the top, let it hang down. Grab it with those long nose pliers, carefully squeeze it, and bring it down into the other lower shoe. Before you continue on, double check all of your work. You want to make sure each end of each of the springs is sitting into the shoe. All the anchor points are mounted in properly, so they're completely locked in position. Go ahead and grab those emergency brake shoes and shift them around a little bit. If anything falls off, you know it wasn't secured properly. The next thing you want to do is clean up the mating surface on the end of your axle here, and then also make sure you clean up the mating surface on the backside of your brake rotor. Once you've cleaned up both those areas, continue on with some copper never sees. Now we're going to go ahead and put the rotor on here. Before we do, I want to talk about the adjustment point right here. You're going to want to make sure that you adjust this out to the point where when you put the rotor on, you can hear a slight drag from the shoes here, but not necessarily feel something that feels like you're holding it back. The more drag you have coming from your emergency brake shoes, the more heat you're going to get. As this heats up, it's going to start to swell, and you might find that your emergency brake shoes cause a hang-up situation. So what you want to do is just either de-adjust or adjust this out to the point that you hear just a tiny bit of drag. There we are. I've got a tiny bit of drag coming from this area, but I can still spin it fairly freely. Now we can start putting on our caliper. Make sure that you have each of your slider pins pushed back as far as you can. We'll take this and put it in position over the brake rotor. Once you have the top slid in, go ahead and roll it down along the bottom as well. Once it's in place, continue on with your two mounting bolts. Start them in, snug them up, torque them to 24 foot-pounds. Once you're sure everything's secure and torqued along the way, we'll continue on by putting on our wheel. Start on all 6 of our lug nuts and bottom them out. Once we've done that, go ahead and get your wheel safely back on the ground. We'll torque each of these to 98 foot-pounds in a crisscross manner. Torqued. All right, at this point, we showed you how to do one side of your emergency brake shoes. After this, go ahead and do the exact same thing on the other side of the vehicle. Once you've done both sides, go ahead and test the emergency brake and make sure it functions forward and reverse. Aside from that, thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.